Hi guys, my name is Crystal Bianca and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a book that I recently finished reading called On Writing by Stephen King. I picked up this book to help me write my first book, and I found this a wealth of knowledge. It was definitely worth the read. So this book, On Writing, is a combination of both a memoir and a writing tips book. It integrates important life experiences in Stephen King's life that really contributed to him becoming a writer, as well as tips that he's learned along the way. What I really like about this book is that he's cleverly integrated these pieces of advice by storytelling. I picked it up in the first place because I'm in the process of writing my first book. I found it such a great help that I'm going to share with all of you the things that I've learnt from reading this book. But before we do that, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what I thought of the book. If any of you writers out there are looking for really great advice from a really experienced writer who's successful in the field, I'll definitely pick up this book. I'm currently reading another writing tips book, and there's such a complete contrast between Stephen King's memoir On Writing and this book that I'm reading right now. Instead of reading an instruction book, this book gives a recount of Stephen King's life as well as giving some advice along the way. Stephen King's voice is with you the whole way through this book. In the beginning, he starts with an introduction to his childhood. He gives vivid descriptions of childhood memories as well as important people in his life. There's such profound honesty whenever he writes. I feel like I'm inside Stephen King's head. What I love about Stephen, though, is that he's not scared to write things that other authors may shy away from. So there was one scene in the book where he's talking about working for a laundry cleaning place. And then he talks about all of the disgusting things that he finds in those sheets. And I find it so entertaining. And it's those gritty details that really get people hooked on Stephen King's writing. Overall, the integration of both story and advice makes it such a quick and easy read. Now let's jump right into it and the advice that Stephen King has for writers. The first tip that Stephen King gives for writers is to prepare for rejection. He talks about having a spike on his wall in his bedroom, and on this spike are piles and piles of rejection slips from publishers. I think this applies to a lot of people who are trying to get their work out there and are sending their manuscripts to traditional publishers and getting rejection after rejection. I think this can be really disheartening, but I guess his advice is just to prepare for it and to just keep on going. Rejection is going to happen either way. I don't think this just applies to people who are going down the traditional publishing route either. I think that when you're self-publishing too, you're opening yourself up to criticism. There are going to be people who absolutely love your book, and there's going to be people who hate your book. It's all a matter of opinion. And I guess when you're a writer, you need to prepare yourself and to brace yourself that not everyone's going to like you and your writing. I think that as long as you like your work and that you're happy with your work, that's what should keep you going. And don't let rejection be too hard on you and to get you down. The next piece of advice from Stephen King is to read the good, the bad, and the ugly. So when I talk about this, Stephen King says it's super important to be reading whilst you're writing. This really helps with the flow of your work. He's not talking about copying somebody else's work. He's talking about reading something and then getting the sense of their style and the flow of their work, and then that flow will be transferred into your own writing. When you read good books, it helps shape your writing style, but also structuring your plot and developing your characters. But it's also important to read bad books as well, because when you read bad books, you can really learn from them exactly what they're doing wrong, and to not replicate that in your own writing. So there are lessons to be learnt from reading both bad and good books. Bad books help you learn not to make the same mistakes, and good books help you learn how to improve as a writer. The next piece of advice from Stephen King is to find the right writing space. When I talk about this, I'm talking about finding an area where you can just sit down and write to your heart's content. Stephen King advises to find an environment that doesn't have much noise and a place where you can shut the door to the world. This eliminates any distractions that you may face whilst writing. It also ensures that you're fully committed to your writing. Personally, I don't have a space while I'm writing. I'm a bit all over the place. Sometimes I'll write in my room, sometimes I'll write on the back porch. It's a bit all over the place, and I actually find this really problematic because I don't have this space where I can just stick to writing and that's it. There are distractions, and sometimes it is really hard to get stuff done. So I think this is a really great piece of advice. His next piece of advice is to write about stuff that you love and you know. You need to turn to the genre that you love writing the most. Because if you don't like what you're writing, then the chance is that the readers probably aren't either. When you write about topics that you're more familiar with too, you're going to be able to make your work more believable for the reader. His next piece of advice is time away from your writing can be good. Don't get too worried if you get too bored with your writing or it just gets too hard, because time away can actually be really beneficial. Stephen King talks about spending time away from his books and then out of nowhere he'll be doing something and then the idea will pop in his head and then he can get right back to writing. Sometimes when you're not looking for the solution will come to you. I've found this piece of writing advice really handy because there have been times in my writing where I have no idea what I'm going to do with my story, or I don't have a solution, and I've spent time away from my book and then I will eventually find a way to fix that problem with my writing. His next piece of writing advice is don't let self-doubt win. Writing is a bit of a lonely process. All you have is the paper in front of you and your own thoughts. The original excitement that you used to have about writing starts to fade, and then all this self-doubt starts to creep in. Stephen King advises to write quickly to get rid of that self-doubt. So when he talks about writing quickly, he's talking about writing to your heart's content, not thinking about anything else, just getting what you need to get on the paper. You can take little breaks to check on your characters and your backstories, but then get straight back to writing. You cannot give yourself time to start doubting yourself and your writing. This way you can get much more done without letting self-doubt stop you. Stephen King's next piece of writing advice is to be persistent. Sometimes writing is the last thing that you feel like doing. Pick up that pen anyway, get your computer on, just get the words on the page. Sometimes you may feel like you're writing really crappy, but it actually might be really good to another set of eyes. So keep at it, even when writing doesn't feel good. Stopping when your story is becoming too hard to write is a really bad idea, because that story is never going to get done if you don't keep at it. Stephen King tries to keep a consistent pace when working on his work. If he spends too much time away from his work and his characters, they start to become stale in his mind. The more stale that the characters become, the less real that they feel to him. It also turns up in your characters and in your plot. Your pacing gets thrown off once you spend too much time away from your story. Sometimes taking a break does more harm than good. The last piece of writing advice from Stephen King is to trust your writing ability. To be an author, you really need to trust your own ability to be a writer. You don't need countless writing books or to go to workshops. You need to trust yourself. There are some positives to going to workshops, like connecting with other writers and to spend time with people who take their writing seriously, but in the end it's going to be you who's putting that work onto paper. Don't get caught up in all the writing mechanics and rules, because that's the quickest way to self-doubt. Instead, just write. This is the writing advice that I learnt from Stephen King's memoir on writing. I plan on publishing another video on Stephen King's memoir on writing because I found it so helpful, so keep your eye out for that. I really enjoyed reading this book. Comment down below if you have also read this book and let me know your thoughts. If you're interested in more writing tips or writing videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.